Thank you. Right. My name is Tapiwa Tsikai. I'm the director of Thisability Hub. Right. Now, as a hub, we came up with this idea to come up with this idea to actually try to complement government efforts towards transportation, but we thought persons with disabilities are the least considered when it comes to accessible transportation. So this is our attempt to try and ease the burden in terms of provision of accessible transport for persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe. Do you mind if I take my mask off, maybe? Can you hear me clearly? All right. So, the background of how this initiative started is that I run an organization that is called Thisability Hub. I'll give you all business cards so that you can actually maybe go through the website and see what we are doing as a hub. But basically, this ability hub is a deviation from your ordinary disability organization in that we want to make society more inclusive of people with disabilities. Our focus is not on fixing the person, it's fixing the society to make it more accessible for everyone. All right. Um, so, what then happened is through the miracle of the internet, I met this amazing lady by the name of Mrs. Is it Mrs. or Miss? Miss Nyasha Gwatizo. Miss Gwatizo approached me and said, Chapiwa, I have this vehicle that is accessible to people with disabilities that I used to use for my late husband, but now it's been lying idle. I don't know. What can we do to actually make it benefit others with disabilities? Then I said, well, why don't we start a small a simple enterprise whereby we provide transport that is accessible to people with disabilities. First, we start with this vehicle, but as time goes on, we intend to branch out. So that is how we started with this vehicle that you're seeing here. And then we're also looking at it being an advocacy tool. Advocacy in that we want the vehicle, to be used to demonstrate that indeed there is a need for accessible transportation in Zimbabwe for persons with disabilities. Maybe I might throw this question to you, ladies and gentlemen. Roughly, how many people with disabilities do we have in Zimbabwe? Anyone? Rough idea? Let me just pick on someone. I'll pick on that gentleman with the blue shirt. Yes. You. Yes.
More than 100,000.
That's actually an understatement. Thank you for your estimation. According to the National Disability Policy, which was recently launched by the President of Zimbabwe, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa, there are in excess of 2.3 million persons with disabilities in Zimbabwe. That's about 15% of our population, and yet there is no accessible transport. This is the first. So, what we are now saying is we really need to look at developing more accessible transport systems for people with disabilities. We hope and pray that bigger players with more resources will be able to come on board and support such initiatives so that we provide more accessible transport at a cheaper rate for people with disabilities. And in terms of what we are doing, we've registered this vehicle under the Econet Vaya system, meaning that it might not be affordable to most people with disabilities. So we are actually appealing to donors who might want to actually come on board and say we would like to subsidize the cost of carrying passengers with disabilities so that this vehicle can also benefit more people. In the near future, we intend to acquire more vehicles and service more areas, not just Harare, because people with disabilities are not only in Harare. You can even find them in the rural, in the deepest rural spaces in Zimbabwe. Um, and then finally, I would actually urge private and public players in the transport industry to invest in making their transport systems more accessible to persons with disabilities. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is my brief address. Thank you very much for listening attentively. Maybe Madam Watido would like to say a few words.
I don't really have much to say because you've covered it very well. What this is about, and I really want to pick up on the the private sector. Um, what we're trying to do is sort of really adding value. We're not replacing the transport operational, but I'm hoping it's going to raise awareness that the people running the transport in Zimbabwe should think about a person with disabilities, about how are they going to navigate quite a difficult thing to do, and making their vehicles, their bus stops, wherever they're gonna be doing accessible with wheelchair or without wheelchair, because you can have mobility problems without necessarily being a wheelchair user. So I'm really hoping that it's gonna raise awareness, and as we expand, I think naturally it's gonna raise public awareness about this issue of how people navigate the transport system. Thank you.
All right. Knew it. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite you to ask any questions pertaining to this enterprise that we've just launched here today. Oh, yes. To my left is Mr. Newit Matiwi. Mr. Newit Matiwi will be the driver of this vehicle. Why we chose Mr. Matiwi is that he is a licensed and qualified driver, number one. Number two, Mr. Matiwi is also a qualified nurse aide. So he is very well equipped in terms of being able to assist persons with disabilities effectively when we are transporting them with the taxi that we've launched today. Right. Any questions? Feel free, ladies and gentlemen, to ask. Even nechishona munokwanisa kubvunza mubvunzo tokwanisa kupindura. Yes.
Okay, I understand you spoke well about the need for donors to subsidize.
Yes.
But before that, I wanted to know, as a business model, how profitable did you value the business before we look at the donor element?
All right.
In terms of its self-sustainability.
All right. In terms of it being profitable, we didn't look at it as being as much profitable as possible, as maybe maximizing in terms of profitability, but we looked at it as being something that is self-sustaining, in that it will be able to look after itself in terms of fuel, in terms of service, and then remunerating the driver here. Otherwise, other than that, we don't see it being of bringing in exorbitant or extreme profits. As we've said earlier, it's registered under the Vaya contract. Yes, madam.
Yes, only no, it is the only vehicle that we have or we take for.
All right.
One we launched today.
All right. This is the only vehicle that we have at the moment, but it does not mean this is the only vehicle we're going to have for in the longest term. In fact, we are actually acquiring more vehicles as we go along, subject, of course, to the availability of resources. Next question.
In terms of affordability, then
in terms of affordability to
some of the
people with disabilities?
right
Right.
communities.
Okay. People with disabilities, you know that people with disabilities, we are in different stratas of the economy. We are not all underprivileged. There are some who are doing well. Let me give you an example. Do you know who Ralph Watumbwa is? He is the chairperson of Standard Chartered Bank. He's a person with a disability. Do you know who Joshua Malinga is? He's the advisor to the president on disability. Do you know who Watson Kube is? He's a senator for people with disabilities. The list is endless of people with disabilities who I'm sure would appreciate and afford such a service. But of course, these are a few. We want everyone, even the person who is unemployed, to be able to afford this vehicle. That's why we said definitely there is need for donors to come on board and subsidize the cost of transporting persons with disabilities. But we're not going to, another way where I think we're going to subsidize, we'll try to subsidize in that we don't want this vehicle to only service people with disabilities, but those without can also benefit from the vehicle as well. Are you answered, ma'am?
Yeah.
Any question? Yes, sir?
Yeah, I think you partly answered the question I wanted to ask. Because I wanted to ask in terms of exclusivity and in terms of criteria that's going to be used in carrying passengers. Let's say there are people with disabilities in one place and other people that have already hired the vehicle. All of them come at the same time. How are you going to balance it since it's only one vehicle and
All right.
people with disabilities need to move?
Okay. So in that situation, we are from here going to speak to the people at Econet Wireless who are the owners of Vaya to see how best we can come up with a system for that. But in terms of our priority area, it's definitely persons with disabilities. But then usually a person with disability doesn't travel alone. They travel with their friends, they travel with their family, they travel with their helper. So this vehicle can carry 5 people at one go. So which means it's transport for everyone, universally accessible transport. Yes, ma'am.
So in going for expansion, like the disability for like vehicle buses or trains.
Definitely. Subject to resources.
To trains, to anyone.
Subject to resources, the sky is the limit. Even accessible planes,
Yeah.
we will go there as long as we get resources for that. I gather there's no one with any further questions. Right, having said that, thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen.